everyone. My name is Fim Soma. I'm here. I represent Warchild, and I can't wait to get the team. Oh yeah. Yeah. Okay. Um, I'm gonna first show you a film about. It's a small trailer to introduce Can't Wait to Learn, because it's a big program, and we hope that in 1 minute we can give you a brief information about the project, and then I will focus on one component and elaborate on that. Oh, sorry.
More than 32 million children affected by conflict miss out on education. The Can't Wait to Learn programme aims to do something about this. By playing educational games on tablet devices, children learn or continue to learn how to count, do maths, and read at their own pace. The games are immediately familiar to children. Their lives are depicted using recognisable imagery from their own environment, based on their own storytelling. The drawings, made by local designers, and these stories are used to shape the game world, their game world. Children of all abilities can learn through the programme, as each game includes instruction and practice modules. The game adapts to their needs. Can't Wait to Learn is evidence-based and has been extensively trialled and tested with positive results. The programme has expanded significantly since its launch in 2012 in Sudan. It is now active in Sudan, Jordan, Lebanon, Uganda and Chad, and is available in both Arabic and English, with French coming soon. The game content differs per country and is based on government-approved school curricula, forging a pathway through primary level education and beyond. It is our ambition to add more countries to this list, because the needs of children living with the effects of violence and armed conflict are urgent and growing. Help us to help them learn. They can't wait any longer.
So together with our multidisciplinary team, which is made of designers, technical developers, and Ministry of Education, and community-based organization, we put actually children at the heart of Can't Wait to Learn. So what we do, we ensure that the program and sorry, I find it. Can everyone hear me like this? No? Okay. So we put the children at the heart of the program, and we ensure to design a program and a game for and with the children, and that's what I'm going to be talking about. So how do we do that? How do we involve the children in the design and creative process? So first of thing, we go there. We go and talk to the children. We try to understand what are their needs, what's their social interaction, what is important to them, and how do they live actually. And we do that based on we follow a methodology that was set up for Can't Wait to Learn, where we do focus group discussions, we do key informant interviews, and then with our butterfly, which I think most of you has heard the presentation yesterday of Cedric, we do social communication and visual mapping. I'm just going to give you an example. What do we mean by that? So, for example, in Uganda, when we were there, a couple of findings helped us take a couple of decisions while making the game. So the children in Uganda had a very, very low visual literacy. So for them, an image was actually what it was. They didn't have this imagination, and they always preferred they always chose images that are flat and simple, because they're not exposed to any media or any type of visual education. And these information and insights, we take them with us and then help us make decisions while designing. Another really nice finding is that their association to animals. So if we compare Uganda children with Lebanese and Jordanian children, animals for Ugandan, they were just seen as for food production. So they are in their households, they belong to their households, but actually at the end of the month, it's just their food. While in Lebanon, animals were seen as friends and their heroes and to play with, actually. And these elements, we all take it with us and consider while designing. Which bring me now to how do we actually work with children and how do we create the characters and the narratives with the children. We do that through co-creation workshops where we invite local artists in the country where we are and children to work together and create the narrative, including the overworld, the characters, and the scenes. So it's usually taken in 1 week. The children will draw their environment, and then we help, of course, we lead or we help the sessions by asking questions. What is your, how would you actually draw your favorite village or town and so on? And then we take these drawings and then we go to the artist who will translate these into sketches. And then these sketches are shown back to the children, who give feedback on, okay, yeah, this really relates to, this really represents us or not. And so I will give you here, if you see, so this is a market that was drawn by a kid, and then how it ended in the game. And then we have here a character, how it started with a small sketch by a kid and then ended in the game. So actually the results is a game that is designed by and for the children. It's a game that is familiar and custom-made, which makes them, by the children, and then they become familiar and it makes them feel safe while playing the game. I think my time is up, so I'm just gonna stop. Thank you. If you have any more questions, if you have questions, please, I'm here in the cafeteria, so you can find me. Thank you.
Great. Thanks very much, Reem. We're doing questions and answers at the end because we've got hopefully got plenty of time. Next up, I'd like you to welcome Maria Burns-Oritz. Thanks. Did I get that right?
Ortiz.
Ortiz, sorry.
Is this one work? Or I'll just,
yeah, that one works.
that one's good? Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Perfect. Hi, I'm Maria Burns-Ortiz, co-founder and CEO of 7 Generation Games. So last August, I was doing teacher training at a school on the Standing Rock Reservation. The principal was adamant it had to be in person because almost all their teachers are placed through Teach for America, which means most of them it was their first time ever in the classroom. No matter how easy you say it's going to be for them to figure out, it never is, the principal told me. And if there's anything you take away from this talk, I hope that point is one of them. I'm assuming most of you haven't been to Standing Rock, but if you put the school's address into your GPS, it shows your location here, which is on a riverbank about 5 miles off a road, which is not only not a school, but not close to the actual school. So rural directions are the best. You go past the buffalo herd, 43 miles, you turn left at the stop sign, and yes, in 43 miles there is the stop sign, and eventually you end up at the school. Getting these very specific directions is important because you know these red cell phone maps where almost shows you like, we cover basically everywhere. A lot of the schools we're in, they're in the white parts. That means if your GPS leads you into the river, good luck calling for help. The same week, my co-founder was at one of the 9 micro schools we're working with in Tomé, Chile, which is about 6 hours outside of Santiago. She finds between the previous visit and this one, the school, which only has Android tablets, no longer has internet. So all connectivity is through cell phone hotspot tethering, which is about as good as you would expect in a remote Latin American location. When we're building our games, these are the schools that we have in mind. And then when we told people we wanted to build games to close the math gap in tribal and Spanish-speaking communities, they told us that was an amazing idea, incredibly important work, absolutely necessary. Now, when we asked people about funding this amazing, incredibly important and necessary work, well, that was a different story. It doesn't elicit that cha-ching noise in investors and other people's minds. Rural, tribal, and underserved. I mean, this might as well scream, will not scale. But we believed it could, and we still do, and we set out to prove it. We started in rural America, and now we are working in projects in 4 different countries. And the very first thing they ask, we go into these conversations, it sounds absolutely great, but what are the technology requirements? Because anyone who works in technology knows that what works on a developer's setup is probably not going to work on the older, clunkier machines that you have encountered in classrooms. I meet with people who are in the forefronts of ed tech and gaming, and they say things to me like, every school is going one-to-one, or the graphics need to be better while streaming from the cloud. But the schools we're in, they need solutions today. And these aspirational platforms being created for the digital classrooms of tomorrow, they're not going to work today, they're not going to work there tomorrow, and they're probably not going to work there in 5 years from now. And there are a lot more schools that we're working with and we know of outside of these digital bubbles than in. So when we said we're going to create games for tribal communities to close the math gap, we knew that if it worked, we would be able to scale that. You know, it's not just that lack of math proficiency is not limited to US American Indian reservations. Yes, but I would always get the beloved yes, but when I told people this. How will that apply to kids who aren't from those communities, these Native American and Latino characters that you're using? And I always answer this question with a question. How many millions of people who weren't Scottish liked and saw Braveheart? How many of them more recently liked Coco? How many people played Super Mario Brothers and liked it and weren't Italian plumbers? Okay? This idea that the media cannot be of any interest to you if it doesn't reflect you is a very, to be honest, white privilege mindset. Because if you are Black, Hispanic, Asian, Native American, biracial, pretty much anything other than white, almost all your curriculum and characters and media you're consuming in your life has not been reflective of you. I say this while adding that on the back end, we also built them to be easily culturally customizable in language of instruction and content. So we have games in English, Spanish, Lakota, a Dakota one coming out soon. You know, people hear underserved, and their first thought is poor. And the reality is, though, at its core, underserved means provided with inadequate service, right? And isn't what we as innovators, isn't that what we're taught to look for? Gaps in the market, unmet needs. Those are the solutions we should be creating. Now, don't get me wrong, many of the schools that we work with are in low-income communities, but those schools are still spending money on curriculum, software, and educational purchases, which right now are ineffective solutions that don't meet the needs of those communities. Games are a powerful way to close the gap when it comes to equity in education, but only if those games are reflective of and accessible to the communities they serve. In our 7 years, we've seen a lot of educational game companies and initiatives come and go. And if we'd listened to everyone who told us we were doing things absolutely wrong and we should be doing this differently, it would have also been game over for us long ago. And yet we're still here. Now, I'm not here to tell you if everyone says it's unfeasible and no one wants to fund your game, you should do it anyway. I mean, that sounds super empowering, but it's really a path to bankruptcy. Fortunately for us, the US Department of Agriculture gave us our seed capital, and we've been able to grow from there. What I do hope, and if I can bookend with a second takeaway, is that the understanding that what underserved communities need when it comes to games especially runs very contrary to what tech sector leaders and investors will tell you should be building when it comes to games. We need to find ways to build these games anyway. Thank you.
Brilliant stuff, brilliant stuff. So next up is Amanda. Thanks.
Hi everyone, my name's Amanda Armstrong. I'm with the Learning Games Lab at NMSU. At the Learning Games Lab, we create games, animations, and other types of interactives with different partners, both within the state of New Mexico as well as outside of the state of New Mexico, to focus on different types of educational content. Today I'm going to focus on one of our projects that we've been working on with partners at Colorado State University, and it's called HEROES, which stands for Healthy Environment Study. And so within this project, the audience for it is preschool age, so 3 to 5 years. They're from low socioeconomic communities, as well as they're in the rural places of northern Colorado. and they also come from diverse backgrounds. And for this project, we focused on we had emphasized on two things with the child. One was trying new foods and getting the children who use our games to be able to understand that trying new foods, that a reaction can change over time, that you can eat something and have a positive experience or maybe a neutral experience the first time, and that can change over time as you eat it or possibly remain the same. And then the second was to enhance physical movement, so and with a specific emphasis on gross motor movement with their whole bodies. And so within that, we really had like 3 different assumptions that I'm going to focus on in this talk. And if you have questions, we can talk about that a little more. So first was the assumption about within this community, what kind of technology do they use? What type of technology do they have access to versus and what the assumptions are about that versus what they actually have. So our partners did a study with families of those communities from who are families of like 5 Head Start preschool centers to find out information about what actually technology do they use and have access to. So within that, 92% use smartphones and tablets of the kids. This is of the children. 3/4 of the children use devices occasionally or daily. 89% use technology on their own, and then as far as co-use, 88% would use their device with parents and 72 used it with children. And then of the parents, we found that 90% of them downloaded apps to be able to use with their children. So as a result of that, we took that and said, we're going to create a suite of apps. So these are apps that currently we're finishing up development them. 2 of them, Jungle Gym, which are next to each other, focus on physical movement, so things like hopping, skipping. And the first one, more for 3 to 4 age, has simpler movements. And then as the second one has more complex movements that'll be for 4 to 5-year-olds. Then the one up top, you see the spinner, and that has like very short physical gross motor movement kinds of activities. And then the one that you see to the right is focused on healthy eating, and that's the one where we're talking about trying different foods, and they have the different characters they can select for there. The second assumption was about character representation. What are the characters that would resonate with the children as we're creating these apps? So for that, we did a lot of user testing. So we did some user testing with the kids, and just to see, we drew out some different characters, as you see the monsters and the characters up top, and we would ask them questions like, what characters would you like to have a story about, or what are your favorite characters? Show us a picture of that. And so we asked them in different ways. We did a few user testings about that, and then we continuously did some testing when we got the digital form. And so when we looked at that, we found that the children typically liked both. They liked both the combination of the monsters and the human characters. And as a result, we did the monsters and the humans. So we have 3 monsters, and then we had like 5 children. And then also we tested it, and then our partners in Colorado tested it with the preschools in their classrooms to also make sure. So we got a lot of different feedback from the children. Then the second one was about the content itself. One specifically looking at the content for the gross motor, and then also for the content with the food, the types of food that they would want to eat, that they would know, that would generate conversations with the families. And then for that, we have a content specialist that was with our partners at Colorado State. So our partners were very knowledgeable about the different types of food, about different types of movement for that specific age group, what they could do, as well as looking at the families and what they could do within that, what they wanted to do within that area. And then we also did a lot of testing. So before we did some testing of scripts, and then when we got to the digital format, to the app version, as you see, we also tested there with the kids. And so specifically for the food, we found that using foods that were familiar to the community, so we wanted to make sure we used a combination of that, as well as bringing in different types of food. So we have like something like milk, and then we'll have like jicama, which sometimes children knew, or sometimes they thought it was potato, but we wanted to have kind of these different foods that generated these conversations, tomatoes as well. So within the app, and then also we had some wild cards. So you see to the corner, there's a purple fruit, and so that was one that in the Learning Games Lab, we've had that in some of our different animations and such. And so that was one that we kind of threw in the wild card. And then third, for our design choice, we thought about what about the different types of activities, and what was ones that we want them to be exposed to, and ones that they wanted to be exposed to as well, and wanted to use with that would also generate them to play the games or do the movements with their families. And so you see that we have like the beam, like we have a balanced beam as well as a ball, and then one is like where they're picking blueberries. So we did a mixture of both activities that would be familiar to the families as well as new to the families. And so within this project, it kind of like aligned with a lot of the values that we have within the Learning Games Lab. So one, making sure that all team members are designers. So not only do our developers consider themselves designers, but also the people we partner with, our content specialists. Testing is done regularly. So we start with testing scripts and testing paper prototypes, and then seeing kind of how that works and evolves over time, and see if we need to make modifications, and continuously doing that. We really work on making sure no one's excluded for from our products, and specifically for this one, because this is based with clients in northern Colorado, we wanted to make sure that it resonated with the community and that it was going to be something that would work for them. We also look at our own standards and making sure that we test those regularly, making sure that our content is research-based, which is not only the content that we create, but also like the content that's that it's based in research, that the content experts that we have that. And then also reaching a larger audience beyond our university and beyond New Mexico State, but to a wider range. So thank you.
Great, thanks so much. Thank you. Fantastic. I have so many questions myself. Next up, please, Tammy. Thank you. Oh.
Are my slides not here?
No, they should be. Yeah, I know. I think they took the wrong one off the memory stick.
Okay.
There was too many.
So are my slides here or no?
No.
They're not. Okay,
But
great. I just need a mic.
no.
Got
we
it.
have to get
Hi.
slides
No,
for
we're
you.
fine. Seriously, I'm fine. I got this. I'm a teacher.
Yeah, put it
So
back.
my name. We got this. So you're not going to see any of my pictures, but that's okay. So my name is Tammy Schrader. I hail from Eastern Washington, Spokane, Washington, named after the tribal nation, the Spokane Indians. And I don't even need this. I don't even have slides. Good heavens. So I do not live in Seattle. I live on the east side of the mountains, right? And so I want to tell you just a little bit about what we've got going on out there, especially around equity issues. So I know that you probably have heard of those companies that sit on the western side of our state, things like Microsoft, and you may have heard of Amazon, and you may have heard of Facebook, and they all sit over there, right, in those communities. And hailing from Eastern Washington, I started my life there as a teacher, an older teacher, much older, as you can tell. But what happened is when I stepped into what we call an ESD, and I had a lovely picture of what an ESD is. Our state's broken into 9 regions. I serve Eastern Washington. I serve 59 school districts. And when I stepped into my job, I was what they call a science coordinator, which means I serve 59 school districts in science. And I said to my superintendent, I have these things that I do, like game-based learning in my classroom. And he says, yeah, go ahead and go for it. And I said, okay, you're inviting crazy, right? But he goes, no, it's complicated, but not crazy. Thank you, Dr. Michael Dunn. So he said, go ahead and go with it. And you know that saying, be careful what you ask for because sometimes you get it? So really what happened is we created all these game-based learnings in Eastern Washington. We've got game-based fellows that get together once a month. We've got people that are really systematically rolling out game-based learning. And one of the things that happened is our governor, Governor Jay Inslee, about a year ago said, we're gonna give $4 million to climate science in Washington State. And we're gonna split them up in the ESDs. And when I wrote my proposal a year ago, I said, you know what? We have an equity issue, and I need to reach every kid, all kids. And you know that kids are not big into textbooks. Anybody that steps into a classroom knows this. I said, I think we should roll out a climate science game, right? And so Filament Games partnered with us, and we created a game called Climate Champions. And I gotta tell you, the lady who approved my proposal, she said, Tammy, I'm gonna be honest with you. I picked it up, I read it, I sat it down. I picked it up, I read it, and I sat it down, and she said, this is nuts. And then she approved it without her boss's knowledge. God, I hope they're not filming this. So anyway, thank you, Ellen Ebert, yes, out of Washington State. And this is what happened. They created this board game because it was an equity issue. And I said, you know what? I serve tribal communities, and they don't all have internet access. And some towns have, half the town has internet access and half of it doesn't, right? There's just this crazy space we live in Washington State. And some of my rural districts have 45 kids, and those 45 kids deserve to be served just as much as 31,000 kids in Spokane Public Schools, right? So we built this game, and what was great was we started doing the rollout, and we started presenting to museums, and we started presenting to the governor's office. And the next thing I know, seriously, I present at the Governor's Alliance meeting, and a lady comes up to me and she goes, so you people over there in Eastern Washington, you're hoarding the game, right? And I said, no, actually it hasn't been printed. Like, really, we'll get you a copy. So our ESD agreed that we would go ahead and buy a game for every single district in the state, which doesn't really serve schools that are huge, right? Because classrooms need more than one game. But it was a goodwill gesture. And what really has happened is that game is now going viral. But the scary news is we are now going to play it with 200 people statewide at a meeting in October, and the game-based learning, and now they are saying this to me, Tammy, it's your job to do this game-based learning through the whole state. And thank you. That's what I said. Well, excuse me. Just a minute. Now, wait a minute. I thought it was a good idea, but I'm thinking not. But here's some other things that have happened. There's an organization out there called FlexCart, and what they did, and there was a beautiful picture I had on my slide deck, but it's a cart. And what we do with these carts is we move them from school to school. It's a cart about the size of that, and what they did was FlexCart mounted 4 huge computer screens, and they are actually working with Whitworth University in my region, Gonzaga University in my region, and they are actually programming games to help kids diagnose diseases, right? Because we have a new medical center in our region. And I just want to tell you this really empowering story about a young lady who they're busy playing this game, and they're in the cell, and they're diagnosing, and it's these 4 teams around this cart. And what's great is this cart is movable. Did I mention that? So we can actually move it from classroom to classroom, which is an equity issue. We actually are loading them on trucks, moving them from school to school, after-school programs, Boy Scouts of America, anywhere kids are, these carts are going, right? Anyway, so this young lady, she gets in there, and she's diagnosing a diabetic. Right? She doesn't know that's the case, but she gets in there and she diagnoses that child with diabetes. And she goes home that night and she says to her mother, Mom, I think I have diabetes. And the mom says, you know, power suggestion, not so much, it's okay. The young girl, she can't get this out of her head that she has all these symptoms. So the mom finally says to her, hey, you know what? We're going to go next door to the lady there. She has a daughter, type 1 diabetes. We'll get you tested. And the mom's story is really powerful about how the daughter gets tested with her friend's kit and the beeper goes off. And the other mom says to her, you need to go to the emergency room right now, like right now. And sure enough, it saved this young lady's life because she could self-diagnose based on what she's learning in a game about diagnosing, right? And they're also diagnosing things like cancer, and they're diagnosing everything. She just happened to get diabetes and resonated with it. So I'm going to go ahead and end here and say thank you for listening. If you want to have any part of helping roll out game-based learning in Washington State, I'd love your help. That'd be great. Thanks. Do what you can for it.
Amazing. And that was my bad. I don't know what happened. We have multiple versions of I think we uploaded an old version, so I'm so sorry. So I'll move on to, whoops. Oh yeah, closer to the sun. So my name is Stephen, finally, and before questions, I'll do my piece. My name is Stephen Reed. I run a series of companies. The 2 most prolific are Immersive Minds and Phygital Labs. Phygital Labs being US-focused and Immersive Minds is global. And what we do is for the last 19 years, we've taken technology of every kind, podcasting, animation, filmmaking, 3D printing, virtual reality, mixed reality, games-based learning, and so on. And then we build around those technologies curriculum where technologies aren't working and we don't see a use for them, we dismiss them, which saves all of our clients from doing that themselves. And then the stuff that does work, we build curriculum around them and we deliver them. We work for clients like Microsoft and Lego and Nintendo, but we also work with single parent, homeschool parents. We work with schools, governments, NGOs, you name it. We're kind of formed the bridge between the people who are creating technology and software, and the people who wish to use it for a variety of subjects. We work in 67 countries as of this year around the world. I visit most of them, so I spend most of my life on a plane and in a hotel. And some of the games that we use over the past have been curriculum focused. So we do a lot of stuff with curriculum with things like, you'll be familiar with Little Big Planet. For science was our sort of earth science was our primary focus for that. With this one, we look at geography and the social studies with From Dust. We won multiple awards yesterday. We used the Discovery Tours. And actually, we genuinely just use Assassin's Creed, which teachers say to me, you can't use Assassin's Creed in a classroom. And I'm like, watch me. And we do, and the kids love it. We use ARC, Survival Evolved, to look at earth science, biodiversity, and food chains. Where do we fit into the food chain? I say to the kids, and they're like, yeah, we're kind of at the bottom of it. And then I say, well, you know, in that world, and then when we've learned everything about carnivores and herbivores and food systems and where we fit, I then take the model and say, now let's look at the Canadian system. Now let's go to the Western Cape in South Africa and tell me where's your comparisons? What have you learned? What does it look like? Where, of course, we find ourselves in a position of being top of the food chain now. Literacy and numeracy with Riven, part of the MIST series. It's an old, but it's a classic one. There's a wonderful educator who sadly has now passed on, called Tim Rylands, who did an entire series on MIST for primary and secondary school teachers. It's incredible. So some of his work, some of my work, sorry, is in honor of him. Portal 2, we do science, physics. The kind of stuff you can do with that is incredible. Speed, distance, time, velocity, angle, weight. But we also do a lot of stuff with things like what we call teaching the tough stuff, which is things like those subjects that we don't teach in schools and the subjects that people find it difficult to talk about. And goodness knows we have to. So in this one, this is this war of mine. Not everyone in the war is a soldier. Your characters can literally, they get depression and they hang themselves. And we talk to children about that. What is it? How does it affect us? What are addictions? What is fear? And we live as though we were civilians in a war zone, just like Syria today. We talk about this. It's refugees, which I'm going to mention briefly again shortly. But refugees is a big issue. I live in the UK, where I constantly hear 8 and 9-year-old kids saying, refugees, they come over here and they take our jobs. I'm like, you're 9. You don't have a job. You know. But they're listening to their parents. They're listening to their parents, and we have to beat that rhetoric. And so I play Papers, Please with them, and we help them to kind of get through this sort of stuff by talking about it. There's a wonderful game called The Unfinished Swan, where you start in white spaces and then you flick paint using the controller, the PlayStation controller. And as you flick paint, you realize that it's not just a white space. There are objects, and you can navigate them. And it's actually about parental loss. A little boy has lost his mum, and he goes into one of her paintings to find her. It's a beautiful story, and we use that to talk about grief with children. Wonderful, wonderful game, Never Alone, where we talk about culture, and we talk about language, and we talk about decolonization. And we help children to try and find their history and their heritage and their identity through games like that. Whoops, closer to the sun. Papo and Yo, alcoholism. The little boy travels with the monster. I don't know if anybody's familiar with this wonderful game. The little boy travels with the monster, and the monster helps him out, and it's great fun until he finds a poisonous frog. And when he eats the poisonous frog, he goes into a rage, smashes up your puzzle, and it's the story of this little boy's journey with his dad through alcoholism. And we use that in countries all over the world to help children to talk about alcoholism in their family. And this is a wonderful game called, I don't speak Spanish, I'm so sorry, Carne y Arena. Which is a VR experience where you are a refugee trying to get from Mexico across the border, us and them, which is really interesting. One of the things we're very, very specific about, though, is that we do 2 types of, when we're talking about underserved communities, we actually work to develop for underserved communities. But most importantly, a lot of our work is spent working to make sure that the stuff that goes, the output is by underserved communities. Because we spend a lot of time in the Western communities and the Western civilizations trying to sort of say, we'll fix that for you. And I spoke to a guy recently who he was part of a Google initiative to help children in Africa find mines, and they had these big long sticks, and they just had to poke the ground and then hope for the best. And so Google and a bunch of other people, they sat around this big table, and they basically said, and they worked for months to try and develop a piece of technology that would help. And then eventually this guy, it was going to cost them millions, and it was taking up months of their time, and this guy eventually thought, hang on, I'm sitting in an office in the United States with a bunch of white-haired white men trying to work out how to stop these kids from, why don't we ask them? So he flew down to Africa, and they came up with this idea. The kids had noticed that the grass changed color slightly wherever the mines were, but they just didn't have grass seed. So they flew in grass seed, and they genetically modified it slightly so that when it grew red wherever there was a mine. It picked up the iron ore or something, and it picked up the iron ore, and it grew red. So then the kids could see all the mines in a big dotty field. And it was just like, we just asked them. And so I'm very, very conscious about that. You know, it's just like, let's not sit around in offices in London and try to work out what to do for Uganda. Let's go to Uganda. But for me, it's about giving children the right environment. This is a school in Egypt. Egypt, the people that I work with in Egypt, anybody from Egypt here? No, people in Egypt will tell you that they live in a third world country. I have Egyptian teachers that say to me, well, I say to them, do you have access to this? And they go, well, we're in a third world country, so no. I find that profound when I'm listening to them, because my experience is we went over there and this was one of their classrooms. It's a square concrete box with the same stuff in it that every other classroom in the world has in it, but they put that on the front. It was a fiber thing. The kids designed it, some artist helped them out, and then they made it using fiberglass with a local company, and they stuck it on, and that's their history classroom. Children cannot wait to go to history because they get to go to the dinosaur. That's their science classroom. They can't wait to go to science because that's it, in the middle of the desert, like literally in the middle of the desert. And then what I did was I went over there and I said to the kids, the teacher said, what is it you want to do with the kids? And I said, actually, he said, where's your lesson plan? I said, I don't lesson plan. I just have one thing I always ask my children. In this case, Egypt has problems. I don't know what they are because I'm not from Egypt. You find out what they are and you tell me and you come up with some solution. Come back and I'll be back in 3 months. 3 months later, I went back, and this, I'm going to have to speed this up. This is what the kids had done. Where's the mouse? Oh. There's the mouse. That moves really slowly. Mouse. So the kids had literally made a quadcopter drone from scratch. They pulled a microwave apart. They 3D printed the blades. One of them didn't quite work. They made the batteries. And action. That technology has evaded human beings for decades. Finally, the military do it at a cost of billions. Some kid goes online in Egypt and finds the how-to and does it himself. Let me just skip. But that's the thing. The other thing was the problem they were trying to solve was rice straw. That rice straw is a crop in Egypt. It's being eaten by a plant pathogen. And the government can't detect the plant pathogen fast enough before it moves on the wind and kills the next series of crops. So the kids thought, we'll just get above the fields and we'll detect it using an infrared piece. And so they stuck the thing on the bottom of the drone, and then they sent it up above the fields, and they can detect the plant pathogen as it reaches the field, and then they can spray that crop and spray the surrounding crops, because otherwise they're losing 40% of their crop. In this case, they look at the age of these kids, and I say Lego, because it's not just about environment. Sometimes it's about the tools as well. Give these kids Lego and put them in a big giant. But this is what we do: we just buy loads of Lego, put it in a big pile, and then we say to the kids, dive in. However, here's what we're going to do with these age of kids. We're going to do hydroelectric power. And there was this man at the time, we had a parent, one of the kids, he was like, you're going to teach my kid about hydropower? He's 6. And I'm like, no, watch. And by the time we were finished, this is what they'd built. Collectively, they'd all built that and they'd understood it. The Scrabble to find blue stuff was amazing. And then I said, now we're going to take that, and there was sort of, they ranged from 6 to 10, the kids. We're going to take that and we're going to put the concept into Minecraft. And you're going to build it in Minecraft and you're going to understand how it works. We're going to use redstone to make sure that it actually works. So I was teaching those children hydroelectric power by giving them the right tools. And the adults were like, no, these kids are never going to get that. But they did. Give them microbits, and then we have children that create cups for the homeless that are registered with numbers so that genuine homeless people get the money, and then the gangs that are actually trafficking homeless people don't, because we have an issue with that in London, for example. Give them 3D printers so that they can do something in Minecraft, like recreate the 1600s building, 1-to-1 scale, and then when they're finished and they've been through the adventure and they've set it on fire just like the real night in 1899, they can then 3D print the ruins that are left, and then they can go on a school trip and compare how their 3D print actually compares to the real and finished building. This is our South African project that we've got, where literally someone lives in this South African house in a township called Kagiso, 19 miles outside Johannesburg. And I had this radical idea that I would give him a 3D printer. So this is one of the kids in the village called Joseph Mary, having a little look inside the 3D printer because they'd never seen anything like it. And the question I had was, can you build a school with a 3D printer? And everyone said, of course you can. You need to print thousands of bricks. But my idea was this. Have the children develop toys, in this case, spinning tops. Nothing really fancy about it. They went on Tinkercad. I bought them the 3D printer, bought them the laptop. They went on Tinkercad. And then the idea was that they would make these toys, then they would sell them through the taxi network. And if they could sell the games and toys that they were making through this vast taxi network, they would make some rand. And with rand, we can buy bricks. And with bricks, we can build a school. And we are. We are now, foundations have been laid, and we're now, it's actually more than that. That's a bit outdated. But we're building the first school in Kingiso in the whole township at that time. And so I think we've actually just about to put the roof on. And since then, people have found out and they've donated pencils and books and all sorts of things. Somebody donated glass for windows, which is fascinating. Then we moved on, and this is me with them. We gave them headsets, and they were like, what's it like where you live? And I said, well, we'll give you a headset. I'll then take a 360 camera picture or video of Edinburgh, and then next time I'm down, I'll upload it, and you can see it. So now, everywhere, I'm going to send them a New York one, so they'll know what it's like to be in New York through those headsets. It's really, really, really easy. And then finally, and I'll just finish on this, because I do want everyone to get a chance to answer questions, the refugee crisis. This is free if anybody's interested, come and see me. We built an entire Minecraft narrative for children to go through the refugee crisis and be refugees. They get trafficked on boats, they get hit by mines and die. They have to make choices about who gets to leave and who gets to go. They lose parents. It's really quite something. And then at the same time in Sweden, there was these wonderful boxes which were based on our human rights. And human right number 3 was we all have the right to be safe and secure. So in Minecraft, at the very end of their journey, they get this place, they go inside, they can build whatever they want, and then we 3D print it, we put it on a keyring, and every single child anywhere in the world gets to take their safe place with them as a symbolic safe space, and so on. So really, to conclude, there's reaching those underserved or undeserving, but they're not undeserving at all, of course. Reaching those underserved communities is vital, and it's not actually that difficult. We have this issue in the West where it's like, oh, it's going to be so expensive, 3D printing and laptops and access to the internet. None of that is an issue if you're working on the ground with those people. I'm going to pass to the last slide just to say thank you very much for listening to all of us. We're now going to sort of come up and stand in front of you, and if you have any questions, please do ask. Thank you. I'm so sorry about your slides. That was so bad. I know, but you were amazing. Yeah. Aren't you? Yes, yes. 4 questions. Oh, 3 minutes for questions. Okay. Oh, that wasn't bad.
Wonderful, wonderful work. I'm so impressed. I'm floored at everything I'm seeing. Now, I'm working as an independent researcher, independent designer, working on learning games. Now, the big issue I'm coming across is that I do want everybody to play my games. That's what every game designer here wants. They want everyone to have a chance to play their game. Now, initially I thought, you know what, if I just make my game web-based, you just log in on the browser and you just play it, it will be fine, everybody could have access to it. But now what I'm seeing is that not everyone has even access to a computer. What do you recommend to have, like, our games have the maximum amount of reach?
I'm going to defer to any of the games developers, although what I would say very briefly is that I've been in some of the most remote parts on Earth, and they all have mobile phones. Like, it's incredible. I've lived in tents in India, and they're sitting on mobile phones, which is incredible. So maybe that's something. Anyone want to take that one?
I mean, I think it depends on, you have to know who your community is, right? You're never going to create a game that's going to reach every single person in the world. So I think what you need to do is figure out who do you want to reach most and first, and what is the goal of who you're creating for, and then find out what their platform is and build it out that way.
Any other questions?
Yeah, on the same lines, have you guys, so with no internet access, did you look much research in like finding offline games? Like, cause like we build games that you have to download, but you can do it in one location, download the apps. The games have offline modes. So do you work with that at all?
I'll take that only insofar as I can say I do genuinely have issues with games that require either online authentication, which I know is important for copyright and all that kind of stuff, and authenticating licenses or whatever. But I have real issues with that when I go out into these communities, and it's like every single time I log on, I'm looking at you, Minecraft. Every time I have to log on, I need to authenticate to a server. It's like, what? What I really need are games that take one download, can be stuck on a memory stick, mass distributed, and I know there's issues with that too, but let's just get it on a memory stick, mass distribute it, and then keep it single player. So I think that would be ideal.
Yeah, the one thing with that is, PBS Kids engineer here, so we deal with this all the time. Like, so the thing is that you also have to deal with, we build games are adaptive so that if a kid has someone like dealing with math, like we kind of adapt the games to better suit the way that they learn.
Yeah. So you're not getting the feedback loop, yeah.
Yeah, so if you have like one game on one device that's shared, it's kind of hard to adapt to one student.
Yeah.
So that's kind of, we kind of fall into that little issue a little bit.
Yeah, certainly, I mean, I think I hear you, but from an underserved community perspective, sometimes that feedback loop just has to happen there and then rather than coming back. It's a shame, but that's kind of how that works. Do you know anyone? Yeah.
I mean, our game actually Can't Wait to Learn work on an offline, and what we do is, because we have lots of children and we cannot provide for every child a tablet, we have accounts that every child can just pick up where he stayed, and then everyone from every time we have people going to the camps and then uploading their information, and then we get it for research. So we keep track, but it is lots of work. You have to invest in that.
So you get kind of like info dumps.
Yeah.
Great. Any others? Baron?
In terms of doing gameful practices at the state, is that targeted first in climate change? Like, have you chosen one priority to take playful experiences across the state, or you're doing it across the board?
Thank you for asking that. So we took one thing, right? So through this climate science initiative, only because there's money behind it, right? I find that our state will push anything that there's money behind. So we are now looking at, when we look at the research of it, we're looking at behavior changes, right? We want kids to understand climate science, right? Whatever that looks like. And by the way, that looks very different in Eastern Washington than it is in Western Washington. In Western Washington, they're focused on their oceans. And it's not that we don't care about the oceans in Eastern Washington, we just don't have access to them readily, right? So we're focusing on things like the amount of fires that we have in our region and our air quality that is just, in the month of August, please don't visit Eastern Washington if you want to breathe. It's totally true. And it's just running rampant, and every year it's worse and worse. So we're looking at climate science data, but we're also looking at student engagement with what's happening in their communities. So that's where we're focusing, which makes things really interesting, right? Because games by themselves, we need to implement game-based learning, and it's really interesting to see how people are all over the board with it. You've got your front runners that they're going to do whatever they want to do, and I'm listening to questions about game development. Those teachers are going to take great stuff and they're going to use it no matter what. So we're focusing on that bell curve, those people in the middle that really don't even know what they don't know and they want to know how. So that's where we ended up focusing. Did I answer your question? Thank you.
Great. Any others? We've got time for one more? No, we're done. We're done. So listen, thanks so much to everyone for coming along and listening to us. The work that we do is really important to us, and you know, the fact that you're here to listen is wonderful. If you do want to see any of us, I speak for everyone, I think, when I say come and see us, come and talk to us. Please get involved with our work. We would love it if you would. Thanks so much.